Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling and flare. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on UCY.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. You can also catch us on YouTube. If you missed the show, you can listen to it whenever you have a chance. I know it's pretty late for some people on the East Coast and other places around the world that are listening to our show. We have made it really accessible, hopefully, for everybody. Go to youtube.com and search UCY-TV, and you can find all of our shows there. Anyway, I'm really happy to be back. We're here Monday through Friday on UCY at the same place and the same time. And we're just trying to decode the news and break down the corporate media propaganda, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's so many different narratives and counter-narratives and things that we talk about in the show. Foreign policy and stuff is kind of our specialty. But we're going to be talking about a bunch of things that went on over the weekend and late last week, because a lot of this stuff is either not reported correctly or reported in a way that pushes some kind of narrative. And we're trying to break through all that stuff here on the Anti-Media, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I've got an amazing panel online tonight. We've got my longtime co-host, D.B. Schwartz. What's up, D.B.?
Hey, not much, Nick. And to speak about propaganda, man, this Brexit thing is blowing up on the radio. I was just driving around today at work and hearing people just dogging it, saying, oh, only the old people voted for it, all the young people wanted to stay in the EU, and, doomed youth. And I come to find out all these channels are clear channels. So, the corporations are scared, man. They're scared people are going to take back some kind of their nationalism, some kind of sovereignty. I mean, however you want to say it. They're scared, and they're coming out with the propaganda.
Yeah, very interesting campaign with Brexit. Now, on principle, obviously, I'm in favor of Brexit because having a supranational government like the EU, I think, is a bad idea. Just because I think local control of your politics is probably a better prospect than having some guy, who knows how far away telling you what to do, because that's almost never works out in your favor because.
Well, what is society but culture, though, Nick? I mean, it'd be like if there's some supranational governing body that said, hey, all you Mexicans, Canadians, and Americans are all now one just giant trade block. No more borders, no more restrictions. You're all going to compete with each other and see we're going to drive the wages to the bottom. I mean, it's so easy to see. And they put it under a veil of multiculturalism, and it's not being used at all how they're saying it is.
Yeah, I mean, these things are sold in one way and are, practiced another. And that's exactly what has gone on over there in the EU. And now they're talking about deepening I've seen several reports from some like UK outlets about like deepening the what's left of the European Union, at least while it is being held together kind of fragilely, I guess you could say.
And the Brexit's coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of countries now, at least 5 have said that they're thinking about breaking away from the EU now that the UK is kind of announcing that they're going to. And also, not only that, but even just the UK is now going to be, the Scottish independence movement is now calling for a new referendum and stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to watch. I want to bring Jake Anderson in. He's also joining us on the panel tonight. What's up, Jake?
Not a whole lot. Yeah.
You're alive and well. That's the good news.
Yes.
Jake, you had a really interesting article out today. We're not going to talk about it tonight because the individual who you actually wrote the article about is going to be joining us on Wednesday. You want to give us a quick little intro to that?
Yeah. Well, it's just kind of a profile of Zoltan Istvan, who's running for president for the Transhumanist Party, and so the article is just kind of like a little bit of a profile of him, and I spoke with him a little bit. And pretty interesting dude. I'm really hoping if he gets his immortality bus back up and running, the coffin bus, I'm hoping to join him and do a kind of a longer piece on his political beliefs.
Sounds really interesting. Transhumanism, it's a very touchy subject for some, but it's kind of about the morphing of human and robot, and there's a lot of implications there. Immortality has been thrown around a bit here and there, but that movement and stuff. So it's going to be a really interesting show on Wednesday, so make sure you don't miss it. It's going to be, you're going to hear some interesting things that you may have never heard before, because I'm also kind of, in the dark about some of this stuff, so I'm like really interested to hear what this guy has to say. Back to the Brexit, though. I mean, Jake, what are your thoughts on the Brexit?
I don't know a whole lot about the history of the EU or England's political system, really, but I am interested in kind of how it's a microcosm for other stuff that's going around the world, and how it will translate, and particularly how it's going to affect the global markets, which have, pretty much plummeted. I mean, the Dow's lost like 900 points since it happened, just between Friday and Monday. And the English market's even more messed up. And if it has anything to do with kind of a larger global movement, ironically, a global movement of nationalism, which doesn't even really make sense, but that it could have some impact on our election, because if there is kind of this rabid anti-immigration stance flooding across the world, that's really the only way I can see Trump getting elected is if there's a terrorist attack, a big one, between now and then, and it can be traced to immigrants of some kind. If that were to happen, that would give him a shot. But but the Brexit thing, it really is. It's about you guys can analyze it, much better than I can, but it definitely does seem to be a way for certain people in England to consolidate their wealth. But I'm confused as to, there's obviously some racial undertones to it. I'm just confused as to how they think that in the long run, restricting their trade like that is going to help them. Maybe, can you guys clue me in a little bit on what the leave referendum, people that voted to leave, what exactly they think is going to happen?
I think the UK is tired of being basically a pawn to be used, by the U.S. for the longest time. They've been the beachhead into the EU, and Germany kind of was our back door. And I think with the thing going on with Russia now, where UK is kind of like stuck in this middle spot, right? Where like if they keep themselves tied to the EU and something breaks out, their economy is going to just completely collapse. So I think honestly, and I hate to say it, this is preemptively a move of war preparations using the UK really as another way to get onto the European continent and fight Russia. I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's very complicated. For one, I want to go back to what Jake was saying, because I do think this is very much has to do with a nationalist movement that's sprouting up all across the Western world. That is really kind of being fueled by a couple of factors. One is these neoliberal economics, which have kind of left behind a lot of people, and that's exactly one of the reasons why both Trump and Sanders are able to kind of resonate with a lot of people, is because everybody in the working class is kind of feeling the pressure from these economic systems, ultranational economics, global trade and trade agreements and all that stuff. These are things that Trump and Sanders are running against. Everybody in the West that is kind of at the will of these, I don't know what you want to call them, technocratic oligarchs or whatever, the average working person is kind of left behind in these economic systems. And so that's, I think, one of the main driving factors behind the Brexit. And that's also the reason why Trump is getting so much popularity. Now, that also brings us to the question of, is voting for Trump the right idea? And is the Brexit the right idea? I think that, the people have been misled and misguided as to what the Brexit actually was going to do. I don't think it's going to do what a lot of the people that were voting for it thought it was. It's not going to be some kind of economic boon where everyone's going to, the middle class is going to be rich again and stuff like that. I don't see that happening. Just because, the economics of England are run by the same type of people that are running the economics of Europe, and the same type of people that are running the same economics of North America, the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. So, the frustration is there because the economic system, the economic scenario for people is not, it's not good. They're insecure with their jobs, they're insecure with their homes, they're insecure with their finances, and so they're looking for something, anything, to grasp onto, and that's exactly what the Brexit campaigners kind of used to latch onto. Now, the other side of the coin has to do with neoconservative foreign policies, where people are now extremely frightened of immigrants and things like that. And that's the other side of the Brexit. And just like with Trump, it's not only a trade thing, but it's also this cultural war that he's trying to start up, where it's like, blaming the immigrants and stuff for all of our economic problems, which is misleading at least. It's a very, very just distractionary kind of idea that's been put out there, but you can't deny that there's a huge anti-immigrant rhetoric coming out of the Brexit campaigners and all the people that wanted to leave the UK. A lot of them have been infected by this kind of xenophobia, nationalism, and things like that, just like the Trump movement has tapped into here in the U.S. But again, these guys don't address the underlying causes of the immigration problem. So the people in the UK, they're all worried about immigrants, and they're worried that maybe, ISIS or whatever are disguising themselves with the immigration influx, and they're going to be terror attacks and things like that. But they're failing to look at the deeper issue here, which is, why are these terrorists being created? Why is there an immigration crisis? Why is there a refugee crisis? Which again can go back to the foreign policies of the West. All these countries, including the UK, have been involved in all these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Libya, and all these places. And France is one of the next country that may go the same route as the UK. There's a hardcore right-wing nationalist movement rising right now in France, just like it is in the UK and here in the United States. And again, France is worried about refugees, why did they go and help? You know, they were like the spearhead to go overthrow Gaddafi. You know what I mean?
Because they're both dirty empires, Nick.
Exactly. You know, and so these movements, these far right kind of nationalist movements, while they have legitimate grievances, they have illegitimate solutions. They're not looking at why are these things happening. And like I said, I think in principle, I agree with breaking away from the EU, because I think denationalization, like defederalization, is the way to go, because we should be breaking our communities down from not the national level but to the local level, and so that, you know, the only people that have say over your lives is either you, yourself, or local people that you can directly elect or directly remove from office if they don't do what you want. I think the one of the big issues with the Western world philosophically is that we've been kind of electing people to office that are like these huge federal organizations that can dictate down to us what we can and can't do. For instance, here in the U.S. with like medical, you know, or not medical, but just marijuana prohibition in general. You know, the federal government is detached from reality. I mean, 60% of the people in the United States are in favor of legalizing marijuana, yet at the same time, these federal oligarchs can't put that law through, so they're like detached. And that's the problem. You know, the U.S. has the same problem that the UK was having with the EU. I mean, every state in the United States, when this country was originally formed, was supposed to be kind of its own country, and the federal government was supposed to be really weak and watered down and only supposed to kind of intervene in certain issues, and they weren't supposed to dictate to us like our personal choices and things like that. And so the U.S. does need a movement like the Brexit campaign, where every state is seceding from this huge, strong federal government, and then we need to weaken down the federal government like greatly, I think, in order to get more of like a democracy that actually represents people. But the way to go about doing it isn't through like xenophobia and through nationalism and stuff like that. It's through better philosophical ideas and, you know, having a genuine critiques of those systems, not scaring the shit out of people about immigrants and Muslims and things like that. That's my main beef with the Brexit campaign, is that they tapped more instead of tapping into intelligence and tapping into good ideas, they tapped into emotion and xenophobia and Islamophobia. And, you know, that's the problem. The Brexit campaign was won by people that were foolish enough to support someone like Trump, you know, and so that's the problem I see. Even though I think it is a, you know, overall speaking, it's kind of a good development, but keep in mind, it would be like, you know, Trump getting us out of the UN, but for all the wrong reasons. You know what I'm saying? I think that these type of actions should be done from a more intelligent standpoint and not from a fear-mongering or a xenophobic standpoint. And that's where I was lost in the whole Brexit thing. Like, I'm still very conflicted on it. It's not, you know, I have a lot of friends that are like, oh my God, the United Kingdom is finally free. They had a huge victory and stuff. I really don't see it that way. I think, you know, in principle, it is a better thing. But in reality, I mean, it was very, very bad the way that the campaign was taken, you know, the way the campaign was kind of pursued, and the propaganda and stuff on both sides was really bad. That being said, a bunch of rich people lost a lot of money, so that's pretty interesting. And I'm sure a lot of people made a lot of money. In fact, I saw that Soros actually hedged his bets big time and was anticipating this, so he probably made a lot of money on that. But a lot of people didn't see it coming. A lot of the rich people lost a lot of money.
He shorted the euro. I think he had another $1 billion day, I think.
I wouldn't doubt it, man. That guy, he knows what he's doing. He doesn't lose very often. So yeah, very interesting. We've got an article up on the antimedia.org from our UK correspondent, Michaela Witten. Hopefully one day we'll get her on the show. It's so hard with the time difference over there in the UK. But I think she was pretty openly in favor of the Remain campaign, but she wrote a really nice, balanced article here on our site if you want to get a real, like, unbiased look at what went down and like the aftermath of all the stuff with the Brexit campaign. It's a good article to check out. It's the title is "The House of Cards Comes Tumbling Down: A Brexit Recap," and it was one of our top stories of the day. And there's a lot of information there. And like I said, man, you know, the unfortunate thing about Brexit is I think that from an intellectual standpoint, the Brexit campaign had the higher ground, but from what they actually did, they took the Trump route, and that's not a good thing, and that just feeds into this kind of right-wing paranoia about immigrants and other people, diversity and stuff that I think, should be embraced because, it's the inevitable thing that's going to be happening here. But they went down the fear-mongering route, and that just lost me at that point.
But they need to be embraced, not enforced. That's the biggest problem that's going on now is you have these massive central governments that are using these waves of immigration as a means to enact, draconian security-type measures, instill this fear, make this pandemonium, tighten their grip even more. All the while, they're causing these waves by creating war, proxy war in their former colonies. I mean, if you really look at it, all the places in the world right now that are at war, like all these former British and French and American vassal colony type places. I mean, people are just fighting over them. Anywhere that there's not a nuke right now is like an open battlefield.
Basically, there's like 10 countries in the world that aren't at war right now. And you're right, man. And without the deterrence, and that's the only reason why Iran is not engulfed in some kind of civil war right now, is because they probably have the nuclear option, as we've talked about before,
and then North Korea.
Yeah, and North Korea, and that's why these concessions have been made to them, because they have deterrent. Libya didn't have deterrent. Iraq didn't have deterrent.
Iraq did, but they gave them away, remember, after 91. Part of their whole peace treaty in 91 after Desert Storm was that they would not pursue any, mass casualty or weapons of mass destruction. And so I guess they kind of did limit that only to chemical. They stopped their biological and nuclear componentry, and that left them just ripe for the picking.
Yeah, that didn't stop our government from lying and saying they had all this stuff to justify the war, though.
Well, they had the chemical, but I mean, chemical is chemical. It's not. It's a mass destruction weapon for sure, and they did gas their own people, and they killed possibly millions of people. But I mean, who knows how many we really stomped out when we went through there.
Yeah, but at the time when that happened, we were like backing that the Hussein regime at the time.
Oh yeah.
When they did it to the Kurds back in the 80s, that's when Saddam was our buddy and stuff, and we looked the other way when he did that.
And he did it to Iran.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just dude, there's a lot of payback there. Like they never forget there, and that's why the wars never stop.
Very complex dealings going on. But yeah, this Brexit thing, it's just, it's created a big turmoil over there. And so, what may happen is the UK, I mean, not the UK, the EU just starts falling apart, as this nationalism takes over. And now, unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, it's not only the UK, it's not only the United States, but these misplaced nationalistic movements are taking place all over Europe, and they're not looking at the underlying issues here. I mean, most of them are being spurred by the neoliberal economics, and then the immigration and refugee crises that are spurred by neoconservative foreign policy. They're not looking deeper and understanding why are these refugees coming. They're just saying, hey, we need to just be tough and not let the refugees in. Let's not worry about why they're leaving their countries to begin with. And that's the problem, is that we're not going to solve the issue of terrorism. We're not going to solve the issue of refugees. In fact, there's more refugees in the world right now than there's ever been. I think there's something like 60 million or something like that, or more. There's no
problem to solve though, Nick. It's just this is a natural response when one's when somebody lives in an environment that you can no longer live in. You have to leave or you die. So it's not like there's any way to fix it except stop having these proxy wars everywhere.
Exactly. And the all of Europe is involved in for the most part, NATO, and NATO is the main driver. The U.S. and then NATO is the main driver of all these wars around the world, and proxy wars and regime change and coups and all this stuff. And this is why we're having these refugee crises. Now, Europe is closer to Syria, which is where a lot of the refugees are coming from right now, and other than North Africa. But back at home, here in the United States, the refugees that we're dealing with, and again, back to Trump,
the people from Mexico, the people from Central America, from Guatemala, Nicaragua. These are places where we have engineered the instability, man. In Mexico, it's from the drug war and the corrupt government down there that we support. We have no, we're not hiding any of that. We're supporting the Mexican government hand over fist. Hundreds, if not billions of dollars, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars we're sending down there for them to oppress their own people. And then the drug war, which created the cartels, and all the violence that comes along with that, which is now spreading throughout all of Latin America for the most part. That's all stuff that the U.S. has a hand in creating, and overthrowing governments in Central America, constantly. The most recent in 2009, Honduras, where Hillary Clinton kind of gave the blessing for that one. That has become basically one of the most violent countries in the world now, and now that's where a bunch of these immigrants are coming from that are crossing through Texas, Arizona, and California. And Trump is running not against these bad regime change, not against the Monroe Doctrine and the bad policies in the drug war that's creating the violence. He's running to build a wall. Literally, this is such a huge distraction. He's not talking about the real issue about why people are coming. You think people want to leave their homeland? Do you ever wake up in the morning, you know what, I really want to leave my homeland and just go and venture off somewhere else with no money, not knowing anybody, not knowing if I'm going to die getting there. I just want to do that so I can go steal somebody's job. Do you really think that's what these people are thinking? Or are they fleeing, like DB said, because it's literally become unlivable where they're from, and they're at risk of dying or having being raped or, being kidnapped?
All you got to do is reverse it, Nick. Imagine if America keeps going the way it's going and it becomes like the third world where you can't afford a car, you can't afford a house, you're going to live in public housing, you're going to take the bus or light rail everywhere or bike, and you're going to have paycheck to paycheck, and that's it. And if you retire, the way you're going to retire is having a bunch of kids, just like in the third world, and they become your retirement fund. Then would you leave? Then would you flee south of the border and try to find some farmland somewhere and get back to nature? What if our economy collapses and we're in the position to have to illegally immigrate down there? You just reverse it.
Exactly, man. And so, it's our responsibility as the public to become more informed and to not be susceptible to Trump's emotion-invoking rhetoric. And we have to see deeper, man. This guy is not telling the full story here, and I feel really bad for people that have bought into this guy, because you're being fooled, you're being lied to, and if he gets elected, well, I hate to say it, man, but you're just going to be disappointed, because all the walls in the world are not going to stop refugees from coming here if we continue destroying their countries, and they're going to be a lot angrier over time, and a lot more bad things are going to happen if we continue. And
you know what got me about Trump, Nick, was that he kept reporting his net worth at between $5 and $10 billion, but he has so much debt he's not even worth $1 billion.
The average Joe is probably more net worth than Trump. He's only worth $1 billion. What a loser!
He has so much debt, and this is the craziest part about it. He inherited something like close to $1 billion. I don't know how long ago from his father. So essentially, he's lost money.
I think he only got like $100 million from his daddy.
Well, the equivalent though to like $1 billion today. I think it was $200 million at the time.
Yeah, but you're right. In business circles, from what I've heard, he's considered a buffoon.
Yeah, like everybody said, he has one great skill, and that's real estate and marketing.
Yeah, well, he's trying to protect the real estate around here with a huge ass wall, and he's doing a pretty damn good job of marketing that idea. Anyway, back to this Trump thing, dude. It's a big distraction. I don't know how many times we got to repeat this, but I know people listening on our show know what's up. But it's important to spread the knowledge to your friends and family, because a lot of people are falling susceptible to this stuff, dude. More and more people that I know are falling for it, dude. And this election just turned into a total shit show, where people are literally voting because either they want to stop Trump or they want to stop Hillary. It's just so ridiculous. It's like the most insane argument I've ever heard. But I think a huge chunk of Hillary's support is definitely coming from anyone that just doesn't want to see Trump be elected. So on that note, we may have a guest call in. Let me see.
No, we're not going to have big guys. So I have another article that I wanted to talk about here while we're on this Trump thing. Really good article today on the anti-media. 6 crazy things Trump said he'd do that the government is already doing. So a lot of the stuff that Trump is tapping into, like I said, from an emotional standpoint, and he said that he's going to do, it's stuff that's already being done. And the thing that I find really hypocritical here is the media coverage in the fact that whether it's Obama or whether it was already grandfathered in when Obama became elected, this stuff is already going on. But when Trump says he's going to do it, it's like, oh my God, this year Trump was going to do this, and he was going to racially profile Muslims, and he's going to do this, and he's going to do that, and the other thing. And it's like the Washington Post freaks out, and the New York Times is like, oh my God, I can't believe this is going to happen. The thing they forget to mention is that, first of all, these media outlets helped enable these policies because they're already going on. The media outlets helped enable them with all their fear-mongering, and, after 9/11, they kind of were part of the Bush administration, I guess you could say. And then under Obama, they've kind of just ignored the fact that he's been horrendous on foreign policy, on surveillance, on civil liberties, on press freedoms, and everything else.
Nick, you won the Nobel Peace Prize. How dare you?
He won the Nobel Peace Prize, so let's ignore that he's done, started 8 to 10 new wars and done a bunch of horrible things. But we got a list here of 6 things that Trump has said that he's going to do that the media is kind of freaked out about, but there are things that are already going on. First of all, with surveillance, Trump said, quote, is the prospect of him at the helm of American... hold on, sorry. This isn't a Trump quote. This is from The Week. So this is from a mainstream media news outlet. Is the prospect of him at the helm of the American security apparatus that could turn a merely bad presidency into a huge advantage of authoritarianism and perhaps the beginning of the end of constitutional democracy in the United States. So, we're talking really apocalyptic here on The Week. And it's true that Trump has called for the revival of the Patriot Act, which never really went away. The Patriot Act...
He's only going to first the hot ones, though, Nick.
Yeah. The USA Freedom Act, which passed in May, was portrayed by the media as a block on the federal government's ability to spy. In truth, as we've reported multiple times on the anti-media, it merely added a bureaucratic step to how the NSA obtains your information. The FISA courts are still there, which are these secretive courts that are highly unconstitutional and illegal. They were originally created to provide a check on the executive branch. The court today behaves more like an adjunct to the intelligence establishment, giving it blanket blessing to mammoth covert programs, according to the Los Angeles Times. Trump is saying we need to do more surveillance to stop terrorism and all that stuff. It's like, that stuff's already there. Building a wall, a really big, beautiful wall with a door in it, according to Trump. That's nice, but anybody that's actually been to the border knows that there's already a big, giant fence or 3 fences or a wall. Here in San Diego, there's 3 or 4 barriers there that you really can't get over. But every week, you hear there's a new update every week here in San Diego. Oh, a new tunnel was discovered in Otay Mesa, which is down in the community next to the border. So
those are natural.
Yeah, natural cave tunnels that just happen to connect the U.S. to Mexico. The thing about Trump's rhetoric here on the border is that, first of all, there's already a huge fence. Second of all, Obama has deported more people back to Latin America than Bush did. Obama has already deported 2 million people since he's been in office. There's that. So, Trump is talking, he's tapping into everybody's worried about losing their jobs to immigrants and stuff. And he's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that on the border and stuff. Deporting people and all that, which he's already rolled back his rhetoric on that. It's already being done. Obama has been the biggest deporting president. It's hard to find the numbers, but, maybe ever. Obama has maybe deported more people than any other president. And, the media is not making a big deal out of it, but when Trump comes along and he's like, oh, we're going to deport all these people, it's like, oh my God, how's he going to do it? How's he going to pay for it? How's he going to do this? like, yeah, well, Obama's already doing it, and he's spending a lot of money doing it too. So you guys need to fact check yourself and find out what's going on. This one was a really big one because everybody freaked out about this. When Trump said he was going to kill, this is number 3 on our list. When Trump said he was going to kill the families of suspected terrorists, and here's a quote from Trump: "The other thing with the terrorists is you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families." That's what Trump said. Anybody that pays attention to what's going on knows that Obama already does that, and we do it with our drone killings. In fact, we killed one boy that was 16 years old, and he was an American citizen too, in Yemen. And we killed his dad, and then we killed his son not too long after. U.S. citizen, not tied to terrorism, not a suspected terrorist, none of that stuff. But we went ahead and killed his kid anyway. And not only that, but the vast majority of drone strikes, 90%, fail to actually hit the intended targets. So we're already killing terrorist families. We're already killing people that aren't terrorists at all. We're killing families just, accidentally. And every time we do that, we create a bunch of more terrorists and stuff. So it's kind of a perpetual cycle. So when Trump said he was going to kill suspected terrorist families, and the media freaked out about that, where was their outrage about Anwar al-Awlaki? Where was it? Where was it? I mean, they weren't talking. They barely mentioned it. Barely wanted to talk about it. I mean, you bomb an American citizen without a trial, without even him being a suspect. I mean, that should be pretty big news. The media kind of gave Obama a pass on that. And so, we're already doing that. And, torture. This is number 4 on the list. This one really struck me because if you guys remember when Trump came out and he's like, you know what, we're going to do much worse than waterboarding. We're going to do all kinds of things. Do you guys remember when the CIA came out? The guy at the CIA is like, if Trump becomes president and he tells us to do that, we're going to not obey his orders. You guys remember that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's been people on both sides, actually. They've just hushed up that a lot of people, especially in the Marine Corps, because of her disrespect for Benghazi, said they would just stand down any order. And I've also heard Obama's been, deferred for at least a handful of times on his orders.
Yeah, so Trump came out and he's like, I'm going to do some quoting here. He promised to do so much worse than waterboarding, and that his torture under his administration would be much stronger. Many of the times when you see him give this talking point, he talks about how ISIS is cutting people's heads off and stuff. As a justification, as if I guess he wants to be more like ISIS or whatever. Very, very, very bad logic there. But anyway, I found it very, very intriguing when the CIA came out and they're like, we're not going to do this stuff if Trump becomes president because we're not in the business of torturing people. We wouldn't obey his orders. Unfortunately, the CIA has been torturing people for a long time, and it continues to go on. And, there was that 7,000-page report on the CIA torturing people. We find out that the CIA forced detainees at Guantanamo to stand on broken glass, and imposed forced rectal feeding, sexual humiliation, just to name a few of the things that they were doing. And don't forget all those photos that came out from Iraq. I think it was from Fallujah, I believe.
If you read into it, I think Cheney's going to eventually go down for. Well, the whole administration basically can't go to half the world because they'll be arrested on war crimes because of what came out basically from Guantanamo, what they've been doing to people there. I mean, it took out due process. A lot of people say that what we suffered was a policy coup in the U.S. It was not an overt coup where a different form of government came in. It was essentially one branch of government of the same tree, obviously won over, which was the Bush administration, if you want to call them that. And that's when this stuff started, man. We went full warrior mode and man, this stuff's still coming out.
Yeah, man. Everybody's probably seen some of those Abu Ghraib photos. If you haven't, they're kind of hard to come by because Google has kind of banned them. We had some on our website and we got They almost took away our ads, which is how we pay all of our people on the anti-media with like ad revenue and stuff. Google went and they slapped a bunch of people, including Mid-Press News, which is one of our partners, and antiwar.com, which is another one of our partners. They had their ads removed permanently. They had to make an appeal to Google to get them back because they posted the Abu Ghraib photos, which is where they were torturing people in Iraq and kind of taking pictures of it. And the pictures got leaked out, and it became kind of a big deal. But the CIA has been employing torture tactics for a long time, since the 60s at least. And so for them to be like shocked at Trump coming out and saying we're going to torture people and we're going to do even worse than waterboarding, we're already doing it. And you have to wonder, is it the reason why Trump gets so much flack for this is because he's actually saying it? Because, it's quietly done. Obama does it, Bush did it. Nobody really cares too much. The media doesn't make a big deal out of it. But since Trump is actually saying it verbatim, is it like, oh, well, he's giving away our secrets. We don't want people knowing about this. We want to torture people. We want to do waterboarding and worse, but we just don't want to talk about it. Trump is talking about it, so now everyone freaks out. Is that what's going on here? That's what I think is going on. So, and then even worse here, and this is happening to kids in the United States. Solitary confinement is a form of torture, which many countries around the world consider solitary confinement a form of torture. That's something that we're doing to children in the United States, and we're doing it to adults. Anybody in jail, anybody in prison could be subject to this. It's widely criticized from a human rights perspective, and it's something that we practice pretty much on the regular here in the United States. So Trump saying he's going to torture people, too late, we're already doing it. Number 5, war on journalism, and this one is pretty big. Trump has been pretty notorious with his opposition to the media. He's called journalists sleazy, extremely dishonest, unfair, not good people. I mean, I wouldn't dispute that about some of these news outlets. The Washington Post is pretty much in the bag for Hillary. Have you guys noticed that? The Washington Post is like so pro Hillary Clinton at this point, it's ridiculous. But he goes a step further and he says that he wants to kind of be able to, sue journalists, sue news outlets for what he sees as inaccurate reporting and stuff like that. But people consider this kind of Trump's war on journalism. But
only certain like news outlets though. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some news outlets out there that are very anti-Trump and pro-Hillary. Washington Post, New York Times, and all these mainstream outlets. You could probably throw all the TV news outlets in there as well, except for maybe Fox News. Trump wants to open up, quote, libel laws, or libel, whatever, however you want to say that, so that he can sue the Washington Post and the New York Times and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Obama, who ran on a platform of being the most transparent campaign ever, has been pretty bad against journalists. In fact, under Obama, the Pentagon decided that killing journalists is actually an acceptable practice of war. Under Obama, they also forced the Associated Press to hand over a bunch of records when they were trying to find a mole. Obama has been very tough on whistleblowers. He kept a Yemeni journalist who was trying to blow the whistle on U.S. airstrikes or U.S.-backed airstrikes in Yemen. Obama personally weighed in to keep that guy in jail. So, yeah, I mean, Obama's been using the Espionage Act, which is like from World War I era, to suppress whistleblowers like Edward Snowden. And then, of course, Chelsea Manning, who I think was sentenced under the Obama administration, is facing 30 years in prison for telling the American people about what was actually going on in Iraq. So, it might be cool for Trump to say that he's going to be tough on journalism and tough on mainstream media because, let's face it, mainstream media is extremely unpopular in the United States. In fact,
recent polling shows that they're very, mainstream media is not trusted very well. I think it's under 20%, it's around 10% at this point. So it is kind of popular to go rally against the media and stuff. And, we do the same thing here at the anti-media, but we're not trying to create laws about, or create coercive, policies to kind of target journalism, target whistleblowers or anything like that. Trump has found it really popular to go after the media, but sorry for Trump, it's already being done. So Trump's just making it cool. The U.S. has kind of done it quietly over the last several years and has gotten away with it. And you think that the media, out of self-interest, would kind of report on this stuff, but they probably have some kind of thing worked out where it's like, look, we'll let you guys get away with it, but you guys let us do our thing. The Washington Post is very close to Washington, to DC and the New York Times. I mean, these are establishment mouthpieces. We may not have state-funded media like some of these, countries like Iran or Russia, but we have news outlets like the Post and the Times that really do the propaganda for them, and they just kind of play it off as if they're unbiased and things like that. So, regardless, Trump's war on journalism, it's already here. So, old news for Trump. Our last point here is profiling. To the glee of Islamophobic Americans, Trump has said that it's common sense to employ profiling in the fight against terrorism. He previously failed to rule out a special registry of sorts for people who subscribe to Islam. However, his ideas are unoriginal. In 2003, George W. Bush banned profiling based on race, but allowed for other types. At the end of 2014, Eric Holder updated the DOJ's guidelines to ban forms of profiling beyond race. However, the Washington Post reported at the time many officers and agents at the Department of Homeland Security will still be allowed to use the controversial practice, including while they screen airline passengers and guard the country's southwestern border. So basically, in California, Arizona, and Texas, profiling is legal. The New York Police Department faced scrutiny after it was revealed that it had specifically surveilled mosques in the region since 2002. The TSA, a subdivision of the DHS, is currently under investigation for allegations of profiling. Less obvious but just as dangerous, following the terror attacks in Paris last November, Congress moved to restrict travel for individuals with dual citizenship in the United States and Middle Eastern nations, including Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So, profiling is already being done from like a federal level, but that's not even counting the cops. The cops are profiling people all over the United States as we speak, strictly for being black or for being Mexican or for looking a certain way or for driving a certain car. I mean, profiling is done. I mean, that's like official procedure for the cops. You profile people. That's like what you do to try to find criminals or try to find people to pull over and bust them for something. I mean, I've been profiled a lot of times in my lifetime for a bunch of different reasons. And so for Trump, and this is a pretty recent development when he said that he was open for profiling. I think this was just in the last week or two that he wanted to bring profiling back. But everybody's like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. The media is like having a shit fit because Trump said this. It's like, why aren't you guys reporting on the fact that it's already being done like constantly everywhere? And so to me, this article is really crucial. It was something that was needed because I'm so tired of seeing everyone freak out about the crap that Trump says, because almost everything that he's saying is stuff that we're already doing, and so just the media coverage is bad, and the fact that he's misleading people, because a lot of the stuff that he's saying is stuff we're already doing and it's already not working. You know what I mean? It's just not working. So I hopefully articles like this lead people to look for alternative thoughts and alternative ways of looking at these situations. Do we have an economic situation here in the United States? Yes. Is there an immigration, a refugee issue going on in the Western world? Yes. But what is actually causing it? It's not the border. It's not the lack of having a wall. There's something else there. There's something else like underlying. It's time to look a little deeper and have a little, challenge ourselves to have a little deeper thoughts here, and not latch on to some sound bites that some billionaire bombastic demagogue is out there spurting out and saying, yeah, that's the truth. That's what's causing all this stuff. That's how we fix it. No, I'm sorry to tell you, but this asshole, Trump, is distracting you from the real issues that are causing these problems. The problems are real. The solutions are bad. And just like the Brexit, just like the nationalist movements growing all around Western Europe and the United States, these people are misleading you. They're tapping into your fears. They're tapping into your legit concerns about your economics and your job and your safety. And they're giving you bad solutions that are literally just going to make the problem worse. Because
I guess the people at the top, Nick, couldn't all agree, right? And instead of having World War III or whatever building up to it, it seems like a lot of countries are kind of like becoming inclusive, and they're going to become more like fortresses and maybe economic blocks. And that I guess the world is just going to get carved up, when I'd so much prefer that we had just kind of like organically went into the people-driven, resource-based economy where the realities of what the world could sustainably provide would drive an actual free market. And it wouldn't be something driven by these complete egomaniacs that basically have nothing of value and just own a bunch of numbers on a computer screen at this point, backed up by nothing except, I guess, people willing to kill for money at this point. That's really all they have. Because the militaries at this point, the militaries of the world are not really fighting. If you really look at who's fighting, it's just tons of mercenary groups and total crazy people, essentially.
it's mercenaries and insurgents, man. You know, and if you look, historically speaking, the insurgent always wins against the mercenary. You know, because the insurgent is actually fighting for his homeland. He's fighting for something he believes in. He's fighting for his home. And the mercenary is fighting for money. You tell me who's going to fight harder. You tell me who's going to withstand the battle for longer, who's going to be entrenched longer. As soon as the money stops flowing, the mercenary is gone. As soon as nothing's going to stop the insurgency. You know,
and the wild card's been Russia, because I don't think we or even China thought Russia was going to get involved in the way they have, but I think Russia's is like, man, these people are right on our border. It'd be like if Guatemala was like, there's a war going on in Guatemala right now, and we're like, damn, that could spill over into Mexico, and that's right on our border. We got to just start like getting involved now. Like, that's where they're at now at this point with all the Aegis missile systems surrounding them. I mean, they're the wild card, and they've kind of unleashed this pretty modern Air Force on these people, and it's unfortunate the civilians now are getting hit, but dude, it's crazy over there.
And Russia is they're much smarter about the way they use their military resources. They've got a much smaller budget than the United States. They're not, I mean, they've got...
But much less corruption, though, Nick. I mean, they don't have 100,000 bureaucrats at the Kremlin like we do at the Pentagon. They have like about an eighth of that amount. So the graft isn't there. And then you've seen like how generals over there are basically like multi-millionaires. Like they're each worth 1 or 2 or 300 million. They rule with an iron fist. So they are like the power. Like the state is the power. It's not the corporation.
Yeah, and the thing about Russia is that they don't hide their intentions. Like here in the U.S., it's like we have the military-industrial complex, and anybody can tell you, like, yeah, the military-industrial complex, they control the lawmakers, and they do all the lobbying, and that's how they make all their money and stuff. But here, there's like that formality of like we have to pretend it's not corrupt. So instead of just having like a fusion of state and military, economic powerhouses like they do in Russia and China, it's like we have to pretend that these are two separate entities, and we have to have all these, middlemen in between, and that's where you find all this waste, and that's why we spend so much damn money on these toys, on like the F-35 jet that's now cost over $1 trillion that is still not even operable.
And Nick, for all we know, that plane probably works perfectly fine, and they're probably just screwing with Russia and China.
Another possibility. But what Russia does much better than we do, and there's a reason for it, is Russia taps into organic movements, and then they just give them a little bit of a boost. Like the Houthi rebels in Yemen, using their proxy with Iran and stuff, and what's going on in Syria, and various other fronts in the Middle East. There's a big blowback that's been coming for a long time, ever since the U.S. started intervening in the Middle East, since like the 50s and 60s, and even before that. There's been an anti-American sentiment that's been growing over there, and the U.S. has to go create artificial movements to like prop up their dictators or to prop up their regime change or to prop up whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish over there. Russia just waits for a natural enemy to be created from the blowback, and then they go and just give them a little bit of financing, a little bit of arms. And that's why like Hezbollah and groups like that are so effective with very little financing, very little supplies, because it's an organic movement that Russia just gets behind them and gives them a little bit of a push. And so Russia is much smarter with their resources in that sense. We have to spend, what was it in Syria? I think we spent $500 million trying to create a rebel army, and only a couple dudes, literally a handful of guys that were actually created. And when they finally built up like a group of a couple hundred guys, they went into Syria and they were immediately captured. Because we're backing the wrong people. We're backing inorganic movements over there to try to create an artificial state of being over there in the Middle East, and it's backfiring constantly. And on one hand, it's like, are the people running the military and calling the shots for the military that stupid, or are they actually wanting to create these perpetual conflicts in order to create money for all their military industrial people to just
They're wanting
continuously
to.
Exactly, and that's when you get to this realization about how bad these people are. It'd be one thing if Bush was just dumb. He had bad intelligence, and he thought there was really something in Iraq that we had to stop. And Obama just was fed bad intelligence, and that's why we toppled Gaddafi and stuff. When you get past all that and you realize maybe all this stuff isn't happening by accident, and actually these civil wars and these perpetual conflicts are being done on purpose to just enrich certain people and to create instability in areas for a certain geopolitical reason, that's when you start realizing how bad these people really are, man. These people are hopeless. They don't give a shit. Like, they're literally willing to sacrifice hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives in order to create economic activity for themselves or to create a geopolitical scenario. It's so bad.
Yeah, it's the scenario you're alluding to that has me worried, Nick, because I read up on tech a lot, especially military, and I have a feeling our space systems are far and away over everybody else to the point where we can probably neutralize anyone else's space systems. And I have to think, man, that the U.S. government could care less about an EMP being hit over us, about the civilian population. They have hardened underground facilities for millions of their VIPs, so they're good to go. And then they'll just pummel whoever hits us with their space systems and obliterate them, China and Russia, or whoever wants to fight us. And they don't care about the civilian population. The less of us, the better. They'll just tell us, hey, it's going to take us at least a year, maybe two, to get the grid back up. We're going to be underground, so if you need anything, fuck off.
Seriously, man. And you know what, dude? Like, we need to stop this flawed idea that we can do nation building and that we can go and conquer other countries or have a sphere of influence in other countries and have that be sustainable, because it's just not. I mean, if you look back at history, every empire that's ever existed has fallen. Every single one of them, except, the U.S. is only the latest reincarnation of the empire, and we have like a slightly different incarnation of the empire. But every time an empire is formed, it winds up falling.
I just wanted to add real quick that sometimes empires will fall deliberately, as Rome did, because Rome was basically facing a two-army front in Persia and the Mongol horde, and then basically the barbarians came in and finished them off. And they relocated to London, UK. So, I mean, sometimes empires will fall, and it's a slight. And you can see the U.S. doing that with them buying up huge swaths of Southern American land.
Yeah, and these empires are just unsustainable. You can't go and occupy a foreign land for very long without them having without this blowback stuff that we talk about all the time. People are going to be upset if you conquer their country, and they're going to have something to fight for. And you can only pay your soldiers so much, like we did, for instance, in Vietnam. I mean, you can only pay these guys so much before it just becomes ridiculous. And if you look at Vietnam, I mean, it's still a communist country. We lost that war. We didn't win. We lost a lot of people. We had to poison the entire place. We killed who knows how many civilians over there, and it didn't matter. We didn't win anything. In fact, we just made it worse because they became more anti-American. So, we have to give up on this idea. The whole world is ready to give up on the idea of empires, and the U.S. is just the final.
I'ma let 'em know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.